5:8, where it goes on to say, if I can pick this up and get back to where I was, that we continue in our growth. 5:5 says, blessed are they that are meek, because they will inherit the earth. That's what happens when we get humble. But also, blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because they will be satisfied. We begin to receive the satisfaction when we're in sync with our Elohim, when we're in His Word, His Spirit, His anointing surrounds us, it infills us, and the Ruach, the distinctive, one-of-a-kind Spirit of Elohim, has connected us to Him. This is the importance of understanding why we enter into the Ark, why we have the Ark in the Mishkan. If we said the Mishkan, the tabernacle, is a representation of ourselves, and the Holy of Holies, that most set-apart place, is a representation of our mind, then we understand that it's the heart that affects our mind, and it is through the heart and our mind that we come into a relationship with our Elohim. That's what we have Him for. Now, we also learned that, we also learned about what it was that separated, we also learn what it is that separates us from having a relationship with our Elohim and brings us into a state of spiritual poverty in this verse, because it says, bring 7 of the clean animals, but it also says, bring 2 of the unclean animals. So, what is that doing for us? And in that, we are learning what it is that separated us from our Elohim. And we are also learning what it was that brought us into a state of spiritual poverty. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that once we learn what has caused something, we should keep that in mind so that we don't go back and repeat the action. So if we say that, then we say, and the beasts that are not clean, 2 and 2, each with his mate. We see that 2 means separation. But the word for clean is tehor, which aside from simply meaning clean, tells us that it is a ceremonial cleanliness, a moral and ethical cleanliness, as well as a physical cleanliness, something we just talked about, that we have to have ourselves in sync to be clean, but if we're not clean, it affects these things. 2 represents division or separation, so that we can say that something that is not clean, we have a state of being that is separated from a clean state of being, ceremonially, ethically, morally, and physically. And again, each with his mate, which tells us that Ish, we say the physical properties of worship, Ish can be found in a false type of worship that brings forth a spiritual manifestation that is also ethically, morally, and physically corrupt. Is that just something that happens in church, or is that something that we can apply to everyday life? That if we do things incorrectly, whether it be in our craftsmanship, it's going to show up. If we do things wrong in business, it's going to come back and bite us in the rear, in the end. So we have to be careful. That's going to come back and bite us in the rear end, exactly. But we have to be careful how we go about our day-to-day doing things. We have to do things ethically, morally, correctly. This helps us to keep our physical life where we need it to be. Each with its mate. So we see that this can affect us. Also, if we were going to say it ceremoniously as far as the things that we do, what happens if we light the Shabbat candles without concerning ourselves as to what we're doing, why we're doing it? What happens when Paul uses the example of I guess what Christianity calls the communion? If your mind's not right, what happens? So when we do things ceremonially, whether it be lighting the candles on Shabbat, drinking the the wine, the motzi, lighting the Hanukkah, all the things that we do, we have to be focused on what it means. What is this? Where is this taking us in our relationship with Elohim? So it affects us both in shul and out of shul, but it affects us in our everyday life as well. Being focused on what we're doing. Again, the Word. We say, well, the Torah is all that Bible stuff. But when we went through the commandments one at a time, we realized that these commandments aren't really all that Bible stuff. These commandments talk about everything that happens to us in everyday life. So, being in the ark, the Word, can help us to be able to discern between our carnal, emotion-based state of being and Yahuwah Elohim's point of view based on the knowledge and wisdom found in His Word. This is what leads us towards understanding. Also in the ark will be the fowl, representing His blessings as well as His curses. Remember, there are unclean birds. Why blessings? How can birds represent blessings? In Bereshit 1:21, Genesis 1:21, it's the first time that we see the kaf as the root of a word in Torah, and the word hanaf, which is talking about the winged creatures. The kaf is a representation of blessings. So we understand that in the birds, it represents blessings, both positive blessings as well as negative blessings. There are unclean birds just as well as there are clean ones. We can eat chicken, but we don't eat vulture. Not that we would want to eat vulture, but just saying. And it also talks about the creeping things. The creeping things represent a choice in that we can seek and come to Elohim through His Word, who is Yeshua, or we can crawl on our bellies seeking the carnal things that the Satan places in front of us to entice us. Again, this is the two sides of the tet. So there's a lot of things that we see within the animals themselves, and as we go on, when we get to Vayikra, we're going to do a study of the clean and unclean animals down the road. But there's a whole lot of things going on to tell us that when we go into the ark, the thing that we need to understand is when we step inside the Word, we're stepping inside to learn what is right and what is not right, what is clean and what is not clean. So this is something that's important as far as that goes. Now we go on to verse 1 of chapter 7. We're kind of bouncing a little bit. It says, And Yahuwah said unto Noah, Come you and all your house into the ark, for you have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Now we're talking about the human aspect that went into the ark. Having made the choice to make teshuvah and enter into the ark, we enter into the righteousness of Elohim. And in the next verses, we consider that it was 8 people that went into the ark. They chose to do according to the command of Yahuwah Elohim instead of choosing not to and remaining outside the ark. Now, we read these verses, it's verse 17 and verse 13 is kind of brings them together. Noah went in, and his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Keep that in mind, because of the waters of the flood. And then this verse 13 is kind of giving us details as to what verse 7 is saying. In the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his son. So that right there, we get a body count of 8 people that went into the ark. Okay? So again, in 8, we have the paradox of Het. Het is the 8th letter of the alphabet. Het means wall. Het is the Hebrew word for sin. So the choice is that we can remain hidden behind the wall of sin, basically stay behind the wall of the ark and not go into the ark, Or we can choose to be like the 8 that entered in, which is the other side of the het, and that if all Hebrew letters are composed of Hebrew letters, then in the het we have the Vav, which is a representation of humankind, that is yoked to the Zion, which is a representation of the Word. That if we yoke ourselves to the Word and enter into the ark, this is what brings forth protection from the flood. Straying away from Elohim leads to false doctrine. Now, they're sitting outside the flood. The rain is coming down. Is the rain going to kill them? Because the rain's just going to make them wet. The rain is what we need to saturate us, to cover us. It's the Word. It's the pure Word that's coming down. What's going to kill them is the flood. In other words, when that pure Word comes down and it hits the dirt on the ground and it starts to rise up, it's rising up muddy. It's rising up muddled. We have doctrines, we have dogmas, we have all these different ideas that have been interjected that have taken the Torah and have twisted it around and turned it into something that it doesn't say. And this is what people drowned in. And we read this in because of the waters of the flood. We say, note that they went in because of the waters of the flood, which could drown them, and not because of the rain that was coming down that would only cover and saturate them. There's a difference between the truth of the Word and the doctrine that muddles it to the point that it can kill spiritually. We have a lot of people that are stuck in doctrine land. We have a lot of people that get really bent out of shape over pre-trib and mid-trib and post-trib and doctrine and rapture and no rapture and why 3 days in the grave, and he died on Friday, no he died on Thursday, no he rose on Sunday, no he rose on Monday. The question is, what does that have to do with my relationship with Elohim? Is that drawing me closer to Elohim, or is that distracting me away from what the Word is telling me and how the Word is telling me that I should prepare myself to live? So this is the muddled water that we're talking about. Getting so distracted that we drowned in something that's totally irrelevant to our relationship. Now, verse 11 says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Now, first thing people want to say, well, what is the 2nd month and the 17th day? The 2nd month is Heshvan. Absolutely nothing happens on Heshvan. There are no feasts. There are no festivals. There is nothing that represents redemption that happens on this day, because there is no redemption offered at this particular time. Okay? 17 is the numerical, or is the ordinal value of pay. The Word. That nothing happens according to the Word on this day. And on this day is when basically the flood comes. Because people have been given the opportunity to make teshuvah. People have had 100 years according to Torah, 120 years according to the book of Yasher, to listen to what Noah had to say, make teshuvah, and get into the ark. Make preparations to get into the ark. Pick up a hammer and help out. But it doesn't happen. Yeshua said that narrow is the door, and very few people will find it. Broad is the door to destruction, and there's a lot of people hanging out on that path. So this is something we consider. 600th year of Noah's life. 600 is the numerical value of the closed mem, a letter that represents Mashiach. So safely nestled within the ark and surrounded by the outpouring of the waters, which is the open mem, we are fully in the presence of our Elohim, connected through his word and anointing. As we see the last verses of our study of the ark, we understand that we are transformed and restored, redeemed, and we become the delivered Adam. What am I saying by Adam? Am I saying, we all change our name back to the first guy, Adam? Or do we become, once again, Adam? Adam is simply the Hebrew word for humankind, but Adam was complete in that he was Ish and Isha together. And he was complete. And when we enter into the ark, when we enter into that relationship with our Elohim, we become complete again. And chapter 7, verse 12 says, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Again, 40 is the numerical value of the mem. But 40 is also a number that represents transition, transformation, a change. So when we allow ourselves to enter into a relationship with our Elohim through his word, by entering into his word, learning the difference between what is clean and not clean, walking with our Elohim the way we should walk with our Elohim, then a transformation starts to take place in our lives. It becomes a transition. Not just when we're in church services, but the transformation takes place in everything that we do, every day of our life. Even when we're asleep, we find ourselves at peace. It says, and the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. We are now set apart. There's the Kof, numerical value of Kof is 100. We are now set apart to Elohim, our life and soul. There's the Nun, 50, is renewed. There's a big old line of white out because I typed something and it found itself there for some reason and I didn't. It's funny, if I touch the little mouse thingy, if I breathe on it, it'll send that cursor somewhere. And then if I breathe on it again, it'll paste, or it'll copy it. And then if I look another direction, it'll paste it. So I guess I must have blinked and it just copied and pasted it. So I know this is kind of wordy. If you'll read it over, it makes a whole lot more sense than me trying to sit here and spit it out. So, but any questions on this?
So you said a mem. That I don't know what that is.
A what?
It's like water. It looks like
The mem? We have
Hebrew letter.
Hebrew letters.
I figured it was a Hebrew letter. but-
Every Hebrew letter has a meaning. Okay? It represents something. The 13th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is mem, and it has an open form that has a numerical value of 40, which is transition, right? We had, 40 days in the flood to take an evil generation and bring back a renewed generation. Moses was in the court of Pharaoh 40 years to become a prince. Then he was in the wilderness 40 years to become a shepherd. They wandered through the wilderness for 40 years so that the wicked generation could die off and the next generation could take over. Yeshua was in the wilderness 40 days to go from being a carpenter to becoming Mashiach, right? So 40. But we also have what's called the final form of mem, which is a closed mem, which represents Mashiach. It has a numerical value of 600. So all the letters represent something. This is something interesting. I was considering some things about the covering of the Aron, the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, and it says that on the cover it has two seraphim with their wings outstretched forward and their heads bowed. So we have one on this side, and then we have one on this side with its wings like this. If we look at this from the top, well, let's see. Let's do it this way. If we look at this from the top, we have the top part of the ark cover. Then we have one angel facing another angel. And if we say that the ark